All right, hello everyone. This is Josh Metton with Jackson Hole Ecotour Adventures. I'm here with Katherine Gura out in the forest of northwest Wyoming near Jackson. We were tracking a great gray owl earlier. We're going to talk about owls today. Due to the rural nature of Jackson, we're pre-recording today, and we're going to be launching this video on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. But we'd love it if you'd share this video and so other people can learn about great gray owls, the Raptor Center, and Ecotour Adventures. Later in the show, we'll be checking in with the education director from the Raptor Center, Becky Collier, and meeting Taiga, the great gray owl. Quick update from Jackson Hole. Well, first of all, we're trying to stay apart, stay separate, so practice social distancing, continue to deal with the COVID situation. So that's why we're outside and giving each other some space here. As of Monday, May 18th, so this past Monday, the Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks did open and have a limited opening. Ecotour Adventures is currently running trips and day trips in both parks. You can visit our blog for more information about the openings and how we're touring safely. Check out the link in the comments of this video as well. Ecotour Adventures has been around for the last 12 years doing wildlife tours in Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks. In the winter, we also do ski and snowshoe trips of Grand Teton. As part of our commitment to conservation, we donate 2.5% of our annual profits to conservation organizations like the Teton Raptor Center. And that's part of the reason we're here today with Katherine. Some things, it's May in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, so we've been seeing lots of stuff. I know Katherine's been seeing lots of stuff in the woods as well. It's a great time to see wildlife because we've got animals waking up from hibernation, birds moving in. We've been seeing quite a bit of grizzly activity in the parks lately, and also lots of songbirds. But without further ado, let's talk more about Katherine. So Katherine is a PhD student at the University of Wyoming and working on studying great gray owls, which is our largest owl in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem by volume. We'll talk a little bit more about owls, great gray owls versus great horned owls and other birds here later. But she's also an author of a collaboration with local photographer Steve Mathis on a book called Phantom of the North that's available on our store. You can check the link in the comments for that, and we're donating a portion of those sales to the Raptor Center as well. So Katherine, tell us a little bit more about your research at the Raptor Center, how you got into studying great gray owls and what you're up to right now.
Awesome. Yeah, so I've been working with Teton Raptor Center, and first I'll just tell you a little bit about that organization. So it's a nonprofit based in Wilson, Wyoming, and the organization is dedicated to conserving raptors, and they do that in three primary ways. So there's a rehab branch, so they actually take in sick or injured raptors and care for them with the end goal of releasing them back into the wild. They also have an education branch, and in addition to staff, that includes resident raptors, and so those are raptors that can't be released into the wild. So their new purpose serves to educate people about raptor ecology and about conservation issues related to raptors. And then third, Teton Raptor Center has a research branch, so that's where I come in. So I've been working with them on their studies. The research branch does about 10 to 15 studies at a time on different raptor species, ranging from golden eagles, ferruginous hawks. We're doing some short-eared owl work, some northern goshawk work, and then of course a lot of work on great gray owls, which is what I've been focusing the most on the past few years.
Awesome. What how'd you get into, or I love the story of how'd you get to Jackson Hole? How'd you get into studying great gray owls?
So I moved to Jackson in 2009 for a summer while I was still in college for my first wildlife field job with Grand Teton National Park. And I fell in love with the area, with the wildlife here, and it's pretty well known that it's a mecca for wildlife research. And so after graduating, I came back out, and I've pretty much been doing wildlife research on birds specifically ever since, for the past decade. And then I started researching great gray owls in 2013 through Teton Raptor Center. We got some funding from the state to start learning a little bit more about where these birds are in Wyoming, where they're nesting, how many there are. And the main reason we got that study started was because great gray owls are a species of concern in Wyoming, and that's mainly because so little is known about them. There wasn't a good sense of the population status here, the important habitat, and so that's kind of why we initiated that study in 2013.
Great. So you're part of a team that does research. What specifically are you working on at the university with your PhD work at the University of Wyoming?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really great about Teton Raptor Center and their research branch specifically is that not only are they doing really important research, but they're also really dedicated to fostering kind of the next generation of biologists, which I consider myself to be a part of. So in addition to doing research, they're also working really hard to get students into graduate school to kind of further their learning experience and their skills. So in 2018, the Teton Raptor Center, in addition to the Wyoming Game and Fish Department and the University of Wyoming, kind of worked together to get funding to basically sponsor this graduate project. And I'm the lucky student who gets to be studying great gray owls while also earning a graduate degree. So my research is specifically focused on identifying important habitat for this species. So I'm doing a lot of work tracking them with transmitters. And then we're also analyzing multiple years of nesting data and audio recorder data to get a sense of the fluctuation and basically the stability of the population in this area across multiple years.
Great. So we're in great gray owl habitat right now. As you can see, we've got mixed conifer, aspen, some open terrain. What else about this makes this important to a great gray owl?
So yeah, we're in an area with older trees. We've got some old aspens behind us, and like you said, some open meadows. So the great gray owl is a bird of our northern latitudes. It's really adapted for the cold, and obviously as we're entering the summer, canopy cover is really important for them, so they need a lot of shade to stay cool during the day. And then they hunt primarily small mammals, and so they really rely on these perches that we see near us. So they'll perch in these older trees where they can get shade, but then it's open enough that they can actually listen and forage effectively in these open areas. So they're very active, especially at dawn and dusk. They definitely slow down during the heat of the day, especially as summer kind of comes into full swing and it's hot out. But if they have a nest and they're supporting multiple chicks and a female at the nest, the males will definitely roost, but also in a spot that kind of allows them to take advantage of any prey that might be available to them. But it makes it really fun to study them because they're much more active than most owls during the daytime.
So they're one of the owls that we get to see, and not only that, they're the largest owl by volume. So they're quite a big, charismatic owl, which is definitely part of the reason when I saw my first great gray owl, it was super exciting because you see this big bird on a tree and it's flying around pretty close to people and not appearing super disturbed, but active during the middle of the day versus where we have a lot of other owls that are in these forests that I've never seen and might not see for a long time. So that's one of the things that I really like about great gray owls. Tell me a little bit more about kind of why you put transmitters on owls and kind of why understanding their habitat is so important to the conservation of this species.
Yeah, so transmitters basically allow us to track where they're going on a regular basis remotely. And one of the things that prior to my research, no one really had a good sense of was how large their home range is, for example. So we've been able to locate nests and we have a good sense of their nesting habitat. But then obviously they're going to be using habitat around that area and the size of the area that they need to support a nest site and the specific habitats that they're using most intensively within that area. Those kinds of things we can actually find out by analyzing those location data. So one thing we've seen is that wetlands within home ranges seem to be really important foraging habitat, and those are really getting utilized specifically at nighttime. And so that makes sense if you have an open wetland meadow where there's not a lot of cover for an owl. There's probably a lot of prey, but not necessarily a lot of perches. And so it seems like from these data we're collecting remotely, they're using those really intensively at night, which is something we had no idea about prior to this research.
That's awesome. So you guys use transmitters, little backpack transmitters, and we'll show a photo or a video of what these transmitters look like. They're pretty tiny. They have a little tail, but a lot of times if you're looking at an owl, you might not even notice that they're on the owls. And talk a little bit about how that's changed over time, and like how you've studied owls in the time that you've been working on owls has changed.
Yeah, so one of the biggest limitations with transmitters is that they need to be light enough for whatever your study animal is. And so there's actually rules in place that transmitters have to be less than 3% of your study animal's body weight. But for great gray owls, they're so downy and feathery that you actually can't use solar panels to recharge them. And so the weight, you have to have an actual battery, and the weight of that battery needs to be small enough to get it down to an appropriate weight, which then limits the lifetime of the actual transmitter. So when I started out, there were no GPS transmitters that were small enough to be able to track these birds for very long, to the point where it would be useful. So we would use VHF transmitters where we'd have to go out and actually locate the animals ourselves to get a location for it. And just over the past 7 years, GPS transmitters are finally light enough that we can put those on owls and just automatically be collecting data. For the units I have right now are on their 3rd year of collecting locations for certain birds. So we have 3 years of hourly data for owls, which is pretty remarkable compared to where we started, where we would get 1 location a week if we were lucky.
It's a good example of how technology is helping us unlock secrets about the world around us that we would have no idea are going on without this.
Yep, so this is our GPS transmitter that we use. So this is the VHF antenna, so that's how we track the owl, and then this is the GPS transmitter that is how the hourly locations are collected. And the way it works, it fits basically like a backpack. So there's straps that go under the wings and then over into the shoulder blades, just like a backpack we would wear. So this would rest on the back of the bird, and the straps would come here. And you can see, as large as a great gray owl is, when we fit this is about how it fits on the bird, because so much of it is actually all downy feathers. But yeah, this weighs less than 3% of the owl's weight. So owls, great gray owls, the males weigh around 900 grams and the females can weigh about 1,200, but we've seen as heavy as 1,400 grams. So this is pretty small and pretty light for them to be wearing.
So one of the things that I think is also really cool about the research that the Raptor Center is doing is, in addition to having these transmitters, which they are a little bit invasive, you have to catch the animal to put the transmitter on it, and I think that's super important. But you're also doing other work that's a little bit less invasive, that you're just listening in on the owls. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we are always thinking about how we can keep collecting information, but maybe in a more efficient way, but still have it be effective. And you're right, capturing and deploying transmitters is to a certain extent invasive, and if there's a less invasive way to do it and still get the important information we need, we're definitely all for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the impetus for starting to use audio recorders in the field to learn more about great gray owls during the breeding season. So we kind of started out this study by going out at night and surveying for owls, listening for them, and we decided to start testing to see how well audio recorders worked in comparison. And I hate to admit it, but audio recorders are much better than people are at finding these birds. So we would go out and maybe spend 15 minutes at a particular spot. and often we were missing birds that actually were in the area during those surveys. But when we deploy a recorder somewhere and leave it out for a week at a time, we can collect much more accurate data, and it also collects data for any species that's basically making a vocalization. So it's a really exciting way to survey for these birds more effectively.
Has the Raptor Center made any crazy discoveries with these audio recorders, or any cool sounds that you can remember that you got?
Yeah, it's amazing. We have, the great gray owl makes kind of the typical call that you'll find if you search for it on an Audubon app or something like that. But it turns out these owls make all sorts of wild noises. Same with great horned owls. So it's been pretty amazing to hear all the different calls. But we've also started to get a better sense of what kind of calls will indicate if birds might be paired up, birds might be nesting, versus just one that's kind of passing through, which makes it much easier to start finding their nests and monitoring them.
So you're like learning their language almost.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So tell me, like, how do these audio work? Are they just recording 24/7? Are they programmed to go on and off at certain times of the day? And then how do you sift through all of that information? Like, that's a lot of time to be listening for a great gray owl calling.
Yeah, it's a lot of time, and it's also a lot of data storage. So we leave these recorders out for a week at a time, and we have them set to record 24 hours a day. You can play with it if you only wanted to listen at night, but we just have them pretty much rolling all the time. But there's actually automated softwares out there, so we basically trained the software to look for great gray owl calls, and then once that was done, so that required some manual work going through the recordings, but once it was trained, it's all automatic, and
Wow.
The computer does it for us, which is a huge help.
That's great. So it basically trims the spaces between the calls,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have someone that goes in and kind of identifies the individual.
Yeah, you just go in and
calls.
confirm whether or not it's actually an owl versus a truck going by or
Yeah.
something like that.
So you're holding a piece of equipment right now. Tell me
Yeah.
what it is and what you use it for.
So this is called a receiver, and it's how we actually track transmitters that birds are wearing. So we turn it on and basically program it to the frequency of the transmitter. And if the transmitter is close enough, we'll actually hear a beep on our receiver. And the closer we get to it, the louder it gets. So it's kind of like a game of hot and cold. And then we try to get as close as possible, either close enough to download data off of a transmitter or close enough till we get a visual on the bird if we want to observe it.
So that's really cool. You were able to. So earlier today, we got within viewing a visual of this great gray that you're studying, and you were able to download how much data from its GPS unit. So this is, and just to clarify, this is VHF, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the bird also has a GPS units that's storing data on board,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can download that data without even touching the bird. So, yeah, how much data are you getting when you do that?
Yeah, so we can download the data every 3 to 4 months for the transmitters that we have out right now. And so last time we downloaded was in early February. And so basically I just downloaded hourly locations of where this bird was since early February until now in mid-May, which is pretty exciting. So when I go back to the office, I can upload that onto the computer and actually map and see where she's been the past few months.
What habitat she's been using in
Mm-hmm.
the winter, and then compare that to maybe what habitat she uses in the summer.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and looking at winter data is always exciting because it varies year to year on where they spend their winters. Sometimes they stay on their breeding season home ranges. Sometimes they migrate out of the valley completely,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's always exciting to see where they've been.
Is there anything you can tell us about, like, what happened this winter at all, or?
Yeah, I had a handful of birds that did stay on their breeding territories until the late winter, which was really interesting. So they actually didn't move until February, and some moved down in elevation, but a lot of them actually moved really high up onto south-facing slopes, and I
okay.
think that must have to do with the fact that those south-facing slopes probably have less snow and get more solar radiation, which potentially can make it easier for them to hunt, because they are hunting through the snow during the
Through
winter
the snow.
to get at their prey.
And how deep can an owl detect a mouse or a pocket gopher through the snow?
Their hearing is extremely strong, but they're known to punch through as much as 2 feet of snow. I'm sure they can hear things that are
Wow.
deeper than that, but
That's incredible.
yep.
So you've been out in the field a bunch this spring collecting data from these birds. Do you have any kind of memorable experiences that you've had either this spring or kind of over the course of your time studying owls?
You're right. I've been lucky in that I've gotten to see a lot of great gray owls over the years. Seen some amazing things, but one of my favorite memories is actually the first time I saw a great gray owl. So I was doing a songbird survey actually, and I was deep in grizzly bear habitat, so I was kind of on edge and definitely super alert. But the last thing on my mind was an owl being out and about. But I was hiking along through this really old growth forest, and I heard this super deep sound coming from nearby, and I just froze. I was freaked out. I was sure it was some kind of huge mammal, probably a carnivore. And I just froze and I waited, and then I heard it again and realized it was coming from above me. And I looked up and I saw this adult female great gray owl kind of glaring down at me with 2 chicks right next to her.
No way. Wow.
And it was the first time I'd seen one, first time I'd heard one, and it was one of the most exciting things I'd seen. I had no idea that I would actually end up getting to spend years of my life learning more about them, but pretty much from that moment on I was definitely hooked on seeing more of these amazing birds.
Yeah. It's pretty cool for anyone that recreates or explores the forests of northwest Wyoming. You've at one point probably walked right underneath the great gray owl and maybe not even known it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I think about a lot when I'm exploring the woods is, man, what are all the things that are looking at me as I walk by that I've never seen? And the great gray owls, I think, are one of the ones that I think about a lot.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about them, they're very elusive, very secretive, very cryptic. They blend in really well with a lot of different trees, but so they can be really challenging to find. But for anyone who ultimately does see one, they're tolerant of people once you find them, and they're pretty amazing to get to observe. But yeah, great gray owls make a variety of calls, but kind of the one that's their most common one is their territorial call, and that's just kind of a few really low, even hoots. Are you gonna make me do it?
If you want to, it'd be
Okay.
awesome.
So it's basically like this.
Nice.
So if you ever hear that, definitely give me a call, because you probably have a great gray owl nearby, and I definitely want to come confirm that.
Nice. What are some things that people can do that are want to conserve great gray owls? Like what are some things that we can do to help with what you're doing at the Raptor Center and kind of help keep great gray owls in the forest?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think supporting this kind of research is a big component of that, just because, a lot of people ask me how great gray owls are doing and if they are threatened. And one of the biggest challenges to answering those kinds of questions is the fact that we know so little about them. So supporting research, I think, is a really important one. Here in Wyoming, we're near the southern extent of where they'll breed in North America. So a lot of people are concerned about whether climate change is going to affect them. And one thing that's really important for understanding that is monitoring them kind of for long term. We're not going to have an answer to that question whether they're at risk by just doing a 2-year study on them. So supporting long-term research, I think, is really crucial for supporting this species in particular.
Any other tidbits or thoughts about great gray owls that you'd like to share?
I definitely want to encourage anyone, if you are in the area, to report your sightings of them. I know it's a special thing to get to see a great gray owl, but I can't tell you how many times I got a tip from a photographer or from a bird watcher or just someone who saw one in their his or her backyard, and ultimately we went out and found a new nest or found the bird. So thanks to all the people out there who have helped us find these owls. They're tough to find, so anytime you see one and want to report it, we're definitely excited and happy to hear about it.
And you just let the folks know at the Teton Raptor Center to do that. Well, I want to thank y'all for watching today. Thank you, Catherine, for doing the interview. We are going to be posting this to our Facebook page, Teton Raptor Center Facebook page, and the Jackson Hole Ecotours Instagram, and also our respective YouTube pages if you want to watch it. We'd love any shares of the post, and please let us know any questions you have in the comments, and we'll answer those as we get them. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi everyone, and thanks to Josh and Catherine for including us in your virtual happy hour. This is Owly, our resident great horned owl at Teton Raptor Center. She's an 18-year-old bird, and great horned owls are really cool to compare and contrast with great grays. They're both really large owls found here in Jackson Hole, but great horned owls are more dense through their body. They carry their weight in their body. They're much heavier. Owly weighs about 3.5 pounds. Even so, she's capable of taking down something as powerful and heavy as an adult skunk. Very impressive stuff. Great horned owls are in the horned owl family, or the eared owl family. You'll notice she's got these really cool tufts on top of her head, and those are there to help her communicate with other owls and to funnel sounds into her ears, which are right there on the sides of her face where those dark lines are located. So Owly was a victim of a car collision. She's unable to be released because she can't fly. And again, she's the oldest bird at Teton Raptor Center at 18 years old. Now let's learn about great grays. In contrast with great horned owls, great gray owls are much less dense. They're built for cold weather, so they're all feathers. Taiga here is a 4-year-old great gray owl from right here in Jackson Hole. She unfortunately was attacked out of her nest and broke her wings, so she's never been able to fly, and that's why she can't be released back into the wild. You'll notice that great gray owls have a really long tail, and that makes them among the tallest owls on planet Earth. That said, she only weighs about 2.25 pounds. She's very, very light. You'll also notice that great gray owls don't have those ear tufts that the great horned owls have.